Incredible father builds wheelchair for son. Millionaire discovers his story and transforms their lives. Mike Donovan wiped the sweat from his brow, the echo of tools clanging against metal filling the small garage. Every day was a reminder of the hurdles he faced, yet nothing compared to the struggle his 12-year-old son, Cody, endured. He'd spent countless nights designing a custom wheelchair, each bolt tightened with the intent of giving Cody an ounce of freedom. So long as the wheels could spin, Cody would be able to zoom down the street just like any other kid. But fear gnawed in his stomach. He raised his son in a town that often looked down on those who were just mechanics. The whispers about him, how he was wasting time, how he could never provide, gnawed at his confidence. What if this wheelchair wasn't enough? What if, when the time came, instead of joy, Cody felt more confinement? As a father, it tore him apart, the ambition to uplift mixed with a towering fear of failure. And then came the moment that would change everything. A local online article about his wheelchair project caught the eye of Emily Hart, a millionaire living just a few miles away. He watched, trapped between jealousy and hope, as she began sharing his story. But beneath the surface of admiration, he sensed judgment. Could she truly grasp what it meant to be just a mechanic? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The attention from Emily felt both intoxicating and suffocating. She seemed eager to celebrate his perseverance, but he understood all too well that wealth brought preconceived notions. When he saw how effortlessly she moved through life, the tension twisted tighter. Internal doubts clawed at him, his mind racing. Did he want her help, or did he want recognition on his own terms? This woman had the power to rewrite his narrative, but would it come at the cost of their bond? As news articles started to spin him into a hero, he felt utterly adrift, haunted by the fear that no one saw him as he truly was, a loving father striving to make life better for his son. His hands, worn from toil, ached. Each late-night session of building the wheelchair was met with voices in town dismissing him. A mechanic, mere grease under their polished nails. Could he ever escape that label, or would he remain caught beneath those judgments, forever just a mechanic, trying to make something extraordinary from the ordinary? Standing in the garage that evening, he felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. Each silent creak of the floorboards echoed his dilemma. Cody's laughter nearby was a sweet but painful reminder of everything he stood to lose, and his heart clenched at the idea of letting him down. Should he embrace the attention? Should he fight against the whispers? But the more Emily learned, the more she wrestled with her own privilege. In those moments when it seemed they might bridge the gap, the chasm only seems deeper. Mike sensed it, an uneasy tension between their worlds. What if her attempts to help began to undermine the respect he fought so hard to earn? As he glanced out of the garage, shadows stretched on the pavement, a murky future looming. Would he find a way to stand tall in a judgmental world? He wanted to believe that he could not only transform Cody's mobility, but also his own standing. Yet with each passing moment, uncertainty soured all hope, leaving both Mike and Emily grappling with what made a man worthy of respect, and the essential question hung heavy. Would it ever be enough? The night thickened, and with it came a sense of impending change, like a storm waiting to break. The morning sun spilled into the garage, illuminating Mike's workbench piled with tools and scattered notes. Each detail felt like a well-practiced reminder of the project that had anchored him in purpose. Yet, staring at the disassembled parts of the wheelchair, a fresh wave of doubt washed over him. The triumph he felt in building something from scratch warred with the gnawing fear that it might still fall short of what Cody needed. "Dad, can we test it today?" Cody's voice was bright, almost musical, cutting through Mike's spiraling thoughts. The anticipation in his son's eyes ignited a spark of determination in Mike. "Yeah, let's do it," he replied, though uncertainty echoed beneath his words. If only the test could erase the nagging doubt that this creation wouldn't be enough to change Cody's world for the better. They wheeled the frame out into the bright daylight, and Mike's heart pounded as he fastened the final piece, a custom joystick that Cody could operate with ease. It was a risk, a leap of faith, as Mike not only needed this to work, but needed it to be perfect. "Ready?" he asked, taking a deep breath. "Ready!" Cody's enthusiasm was palpable, as contagious as it was disarming. This was the moment, a culmination of late nights and grinding frustrations. Yet it was also a potential point of failure. With a firm grip, Cody grasped the joystick and pushed forward, the wheels jerking into motion. A wobbly start gave way to laughter, but as the wheelchair began to glide smoothly, the sound flooded Mike with pride. This was his son, powerful, unfettered. But the feeling twisted slightly. The whispers of the past surged back. What if this moment only shone brightly against the backdrop of future disappointments? "Dad, look!" Cody called out, circling the narrow space. As the laughter filled the air, Mike held tight to the hope that this was the beginning of something transformative. Perhaps this wheelchair was more than an invention. It could symbolize Cody's limitless potential. Yet, even amid joy, there was something unsettling. With the newfound attention from Emily, expectations loomed larger than ever. Would the town take this success and redefine Mike, entrenching him as a man who needed help to succeed? Or would they recognize the strength in his struggle, the raw and true connection of a father undertaking an extraordinary feat for his son? With each joyful turn Cody took, Mike felt torn. Should he embrace this new identity reshaped by Emily's influence, or fight to remain who he had always been? The tension carved deeper lines on his forehead as he wrestled silently with each choice. No reputation was worth Cody's joy. As they finished their first test run, the joy quickly turned to contemplation. Cody grinned, panting slightly, his spirit recognizable in each breath. It was then that an idea began to form in Mike's mind, a way to not only validate his work, but to confront the perceptions that strained against his resolve. The timing felt right, but how would he execute it? The opportunity to present the prototype to Emily loomed ahead like a cliff's edge. He could invite her into their world, reveal the true essence of his craftsmanship. But doing so might open the floodgates. Would she still respect him as an equal? Standing in front of Cody, who was still buzzing with excitement, the decision gripped Mike like a vice. Could he take that leap? The idea swirled dangerously in his mind, and then crystallized into a stark realization. He had to face Emily and demand respect for his craft before any paths crossed with her wealth. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows in the garage. With each passing moment, the feeling of impending change descended once more, and Mike understood that the next step would be pivotal. But would he be brave enough to take it? The soft glow of the garage lights flickered on as Mike stared into the distance, the reality of his decision weighing like a stone in his chest. Inviting Emily into their world was not merely about showcasing the wheelchair. It was about sharing a piece of his soul, the essence of who he was and what he had fought for. He felt buoyed by Cody's joy, yet his knees felt as if they were mired in cement, anchored to the fear of vulnerability. In the corner of the garage, scraps of metal lay dormant, conspiring with the past. Mike recalled countless nights spent tinkering, listening to the rhythmic hum of machinery. It was a dance of creation, the marriage of function and heart. Yet now that dance felt dangerous, as if stepping onto a stage where critics loom, ready to judge every misstep. "Are you okay, Dad?" Cody's innocent query pierced the dense fog of Mike's thoughts. The earnestness in his son's eyes pulled him back to the present. "Yeah, buddy. Just thinking." The words felt hollow, a meager shield against the intensity of Mike's internal conflict. Cody wheeled closer, the joystick in his hands and a grin spreading across his face like sunlight breaking through a storm. "Can we go faster next time?" Mike chuckled, momentarily escaping the swirl of anxiety. "We'll figure that out, one step at a time, okay?" As he watched Cody's fingers dance over the joystick, Mike knew they were taking a significant step together. This was not just about a wheelchair anymore. It was about empowerment, about challenging the world to acknowledge Cody as more than just a boy in need. Mike wanted to erase the limitations society pushed upon them. He needed the respect that came with recognition. His heart raced as he mentally prepared for the inevitable meeting with Emily. She embodied a world of opportunity, but also of expectations. Questions burned in his mind. Would she understand the nights spent laboring alone in the garage? Would she recognize the depth of his commitment? Or would she merely see the wheelchair, a gadget crafted out of pity? A sudden thought struck him. What if he showcased more than the wheelchair? What if he shared the stories behind each modification, revealing the underlying purpose of every weld? Each component could symbolize a small victory against his own doubts and fears. Maybe if Emily glimpsed the determination that fueled every choice, she would see him, not just as a father, but as an innovator capable of standing on his own. That resolve harmonized with the unyielding love he felt for Cody. They were intertwined, both striving for more in a world that perpetually underestimated them. The prospect of failure loomed ahead, but amidst that fear lay the promise of growth. Later that evening, staring at the notepad littered with sketches and calculations, Mike's hands trembled slightly as he penned his thoughts. He would not shy away. The path lay open before him, demanding courage. The words flowed through him, his fears, his ambitions, and a narrative that could prove transformative. That night, sleep came fitfully. Every dream felt like a rehearsal for the meeting. Mike envisioned the moment, Emily, curious yet skeptical, as he recounted their story. The late nights, the trials, and the joy of seeing Cody's confidence blooming. But the reality was, what if the reception was different? What if, instead of admiration, he faced dismissal, reducing his hard work to mere charity? Just as doubt threatened to sink its claws into him, he gripped the edge of the table, a surge of determination coursing through him. The time had come to face the truth of his labor, to intertwine his destiny with Cody's in a way the world might never expect. As dawn broke and the new day unfurled before him, Mike found solace in the fact that their journey was shared. The intertwining ambitions of father and son had pushed him toward uncharted territories. But the question loomed, would he be brave enough to pull back the curtain and let a stranger witness their truth, knowing the world's unrelenting gaze could just as easily judge as it could uplift? With a deep breath, he resolved to speak his truth to Emily. Their lives depended on it. As he glanced at Cody sleeping peacefully, a spark of insight flickered within. It wasn't merely about presenting the wheelchair. It was about articulating a vision of possibility, forming the essence of what he had built, a bridge to understanding that stretched beyond metal and wires. But would she accept the invitation into their world, or retreat back to her own, leaving them to wrestle with the silence once more? The sunlight poured through the garage windows, illuminating the space where dreams clashed with doubts. Mike stood, tools hanging by their place, as if waiting for guidance. Anticipation thrummed through him, charging the air with urgency. He had deliberated endlessly about this moment, what to share, how much of himself to expose. Today was more than just a meeting with Emily. It was a culmination of years of labor and resilience. He had crafted more than just a wheelchair. He had molded a manifesto of hope against a backdrop of societal limitations. The weight of that realization settled over him, a mixture of pride and fear wrestling for dominance. The morning's weariness clung to him as he turned back to the workbench. Driven by a sudden impulse, he began rearranging the scattered sketches. Each design told a story of challenges faced, of creativity unleashed, of the relentless pursuit to make Cody's life not just livable but extraordinary. Perhaps in meticulously articulating those stories, he could bridge the gap between his fears and the recognition he desired. With each sketch, memories danced before him. Cody's laughter echoing as they sped down the driveway, the wind whipping through their hair, a moment of pure freedom. Those fleeting seconds fueled his determination. He realized that Emily needed to connect with that joy, to understand that the wheelchair was only a part of the tapestry he wove. When Mike glanced at the clock, an unsettling realization struck him. Time had slipped away. He hastily gathered the sketches and stood at the garage door, closing his eyes for a fleeting moment. What if today was the day he understood not just how the world perceived him, but how he perceived himself? Would he step away from the shadows of insecurity, or would he retreat into the familiar comfort of self-doubt? As the door creaked open, he inhaled deeply, the scent of summer hitting him like a wave. He knew his journey both began and continued with Cody. His son relied on him, not just for innovations that inspire movement, but for symbols of strength that instilled confidence in navigating life's challenges. They were a team, and today, as he prepared to meet Emily, he recognized that he could no longer see himself merely as a maker of machines. He was a creator of opportunities. The realization ignited a flicker of resilience within him. Perhaps Emily could be the catalyst he needed to unleash their story. Perhaps she would recognize the power of both Cody's strength and his own. When Emily arrived, the sun was lowering, casting sharp shadows on the floor. As she stepped into the garage, Mike's heart raced in sync with his fervent thoughts. Show her the truth, he urged himself, knowing he had a unique chance before her. Would she hear the passion behind his voice? Could she see the father who had fought against the world's apathy and indifference for the sake of his son? "Hi, Mike," she greeted, her eyes searching the various projects around the garage, apprehensively curious. "This is quite a setup you have." "Thanks, Emily. I'm ready to show you something." His words dripped with uncertainty, yet he felt a pulse of energy surge through him as he gestured toward the prototypes lining the walls. Mike began recounting the journey, realizing as he spoke that he was inviting her not only to see the wheelchair, but to witness their evolution. He shared how each modification had been a labor of love, an embodiment of their shared struggle against the limitations of the world. She listened closely, her expressions shifting from intrigue to genuine admiration. Just when he felt the momentum shifting positively, Emily paused, frowning slightly. "But Mike, doesn't this risk making Cody dependent on your designs instead of fostering true independence?" Her words struck hard, the doubt raining down like an unexpected storm. The question hung in the air, and for a heartbeat, all hope wavered. Would they be misunderstood again? Would the narrative of empowerment crumble under today's scrutiny? In that moment, Mike realized he seemed to stand not just before Emily, but also before himself, facing his ultimate fear of inadequacy. He needed to confront this head-on, to ensure that his vision for Cody's independence was not lost in translation. With new conviction burning in his chest, Mike prepared to answer, not just for answer's sake, but to reclaim the narrative that was their lives. He took a deep breath, ready to express his commitment not only to building a wheelchair, but to construct paths of autonomy for Cody. Would his resolve be enough to transform her perception? The quest for validation loomed on the horizon, casting long shadows over their future. Could he reshape not just what she thought, but what he believed about himself? The answers awaited him on the other side of this confrontation, and as the tension built, Mike couldn't help but wonder, was this the moment that would redefine everything for them both? Heaven and earth seemed to freeze momentarily as Mike felt the full weight of Emily's question settle over him. The confidence he'd summoned began to falter, twisted by self-doubt. How could he articulate the nuance of what he was attempting to do? It was more than building a mere machine. It was about liberation. "Cody's independence is my ultimate goal," he began, his voice strained yet steady, as each word pressed out from the back of his throat like a stubborn flower growing through concrete. "This design isn't about making him dependent. It's about offering him choices he didn't have before. It's about giving him the tools to navigate his world." He observed Emily's expression, watching as the frown shifted to curiosity, a flicker of understanding igniting her deep-set skepticism. He leaned in closer, compelled to paint the broader strokes of their journey. "When I started this project, I was lost. I felt like I could provide nothing but limitations. Every time Cody struggled, I felt like I failed him." Mike paused, catching his breath while he fought against the rising tide of past insecurities. His hands gestured wildly as he spoke, a subconscious attempt to grasp the enormity of his feelings. "But in the process, I learned something valuable. Designing isn't just about mechanics. It's about empowerment. Each prototype is a bridge, a connection. It allows him to express himself in ways that society has kept from him for far too long." He watched her carefully as the skepticism began to dissolve, replaced by contemplation. Perhaps she was starting to see the intricate web of strength woven into his designs. Just as he contemplated his next words, he felt a swell of hope, a newfound strength surging within. Mike realized that he was not merely on trial here. He was forging an alliance, recruiting Emily in this boundless vision. "But Mike," she interjected, her tone softer now, "how do we ensure that this independence flourishes beyond your creations? The risk remains." "You're right," he replied, voice more resolute, "but I believe that independence can thrash against the confines set by society. With every feature I design, every improvement I implement, my goal is to arm Cody with not just mobility, but confidence. I want him to challenge the narrative others write for him." He stepped back slightly, his eyes drifting over the sketches laid across the workbench, each stroke of graphite like an echo of their shared aspirations. Mike had arrived at a moment of clarity. He understood now that these wheels weren't solely about functionality. They were instruments of revolution within a society that so often forgot the unique capabilities of individuals who live life differently. "I can't alter the world in one attempt," he conceded, allowing the reality of his mission to resonate. "But with each design, I begin to change perceptions. I want people to think of Cody not as disabled, but as extraordinary." A deep silence settled around them, enveloping the space like a thick fog. Mike sensed that Emily was wrestling with this new perspective. He could almost see the gears turning in her mind, her preconceived notions getting layered over by this fresh insight. Would she challenge herself to rethink her position further? Finally, Emily met his gaze, her eyes alight with contemplation. "Perhaps there's more here than I initially saw. It might take a stature shift to appreciate your vision fully." Before Mike could formulate a response, a thought struck him. "Will you help me?" he asked suddenly. The urgency behind the question pierced the air, shifting the energy in the room. "What do you mean?" "If we can get people to experience the joy and courage I see in Cody's eyes, we can start changing how they view ability. We need to take this beyond the garage." Her expression was indecipherable, a storm of thoughts brewing behind her calm exterior. Mike held his breath, anxious for her answer, unsure if he had crossed the line into risk or if he was stepping into transformative waters. The tension hung thick, and as she considered his words, Mike felt the weight of that moment pressing forward, a turning point not just for Cody's journey, but for his own path of discovery. Would she say yes to a partnership that could redefine their realities? He wondered what came next if she agreed, and how much further could they push the boundaries together. The silence was punctuated by the steady rhythm of Mike's heartbeat, a drum calling for resolution. Emily's attention shifted to the floor, her fingers drumming against the table, a sign of her internal debate. Years of preferences had led her to a pragmatic existence, dismissing ideas that bordered on lofty. But now, faced with the ambition radiating from Mike, she felt a wave of intrigue and discomfort. "Okay," she finally said, her tone measured and cautious. "Let's say I'm in. What's the plan?" The corners of Mike's mouth tilted upward, though reality tempered the elation. "First, we need to collect feedback from potential users. We must know what they want." The sense of gravity shifted. He was no longer talking to a mere acquaintance, but entering a collaborative effort. And then, Emily's brow furrowed as she leaned back, her calculating mind already assessing risks and tangible outcomes. She was not one to act on impulse, and that memory flickered through Mike. It was time to shift gears. "If we can get more immediate visual feedback, I think we could really adapt our designs in real time. Organizing a pilot program where we showcase these designs in the community might attract interest." Emily raised an eyebrow, the notion containing both promise and peril. "That's pretty ambitious for a garage project. We'd need outreach, maybe even some sponsorship." "I'm prepared to go all in," he insisted, his voice firm despite the unrest brewing within. They stood on the precipice of something bigger than themselves, but self-doubt rattled against his resolve. What if they failed? What if people didn't respond as he hoped? "Let me think about logistics," she said, folding her arms in front of her. "I can reach out to a few local organizations, see if they're interested in collaborating. And we should probably document everything. We will need to present data to attract more serious investment," she added. "Sure," Mike replied, excitement bubbling within him. "A visual narrative that tells Cody's story, coupled with the tech, can do wonders." As they delved deeper into strategies, ideas flowed, the initial uncertainty dissipating, replaced by an electrical charge of creativity. Yet all the while, a shadow clung to Mike's mind, a nagging fear about their potential reactions from the public. What if the unveiling revealed flaws in his designs? What if Cody's expression didn't pierce through the traditional views as he envisioned? "Maybe we should prepare for pushback," Emily advised, her intuitive sense for skepticism grounded in years of community interactions. "People can be resistant to change, especially regarding disabilities. We need to plan for that." "I've faced pushback before," Mike mentioned, feeling the tremble of resilience in his chest. "But I can't let it distract us. Every time someone pushes back, they're revealing their ignorance." There it was, the determination rising thunderously to the surface. This was more than a project. It was a battle, one that Mike was ready to fight. "Yeah, you're right," Emily nodded slowly. "And we should arm ourselves with knowledge. Research case studies, gather testimonials from families and caregivers. The more comprehensive our approach, the better equipped we'll be." With newfound clarity, decisions cascaded before him. This partnership with Emily was not merely a collaboration, it was an exploration of their skills and beliefs. As ideas unfolded on the table, sketches juxtaposed with notional timelines and objectives, The room transformed into a battleground for ideas where possibility outweighed restriction. But amid this revelation came a stark realization. Where would he draw the line? This ambition of his began to shape his thoughts into something bigger, more consuming than just Cody's story. What if we can integrate other interactive components? What if we create a whole experience around it? He pondered out loud. Emily looked at him with an intensity that matched the pulse of creation in the air. Experience? That might attract the attention we need, but how then do we execute it? Just as momentum surged, doubts began to weave back into his consciousness. Balance. He needed balance. The excitement was thrilling, yet suffocating. It came with its own set of fears. "Let's take this step by step," he said, wanting to throttle the burgeoning excitement down to a manageable level. Focus on gathering insights, feedback first. Emily nodded, but as she turned to her phone, Mike caught a glimpse of uncertainty flickering across her features. She too wrestled with what lay ahead. What if their aspirations unraveled before they even began? The nagging doubts clawed at him, but they stewed alongside excitement for the unknown. "Emily," he started, voice dipping into seriousness, "there's a chance we could change everything for others, and yet this could change us too. Are you prepared for that?" A shiver coursed through the room as they exchanged glances, both weighing the enormity of their venture. They could build hope, or they could confront harsh realities. And what boundary lines would they draw when facing unexpected challenges? With the promise of change on the horizon, anticipation gripped them. Beneath that, uncertainty pulsed like a distant storm. What revelations stood ahead, just beyond their reach? The morning sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the cluttered table strewn with sketches and notepads. Mike felt the tension coiling in his chest as he prepared to dive into the logistics of their ambitious plan. The palpable excitement had evolved into a resource to harness, but it also burdened him with responsibility. Gathering user feedback was not simply an exercise, it was the foundation for something that might alter perceptions. Emily's focus sharpened as she slid her phone back into her pocket. "Let's initiate the outreach today. I can create a list of potential partners and trial participants," she suggested, her eyes glimmering with resolve. This wasn't mere negotiation, they were laying the groundwork for societal impact. Mike nodded, feeling his earlier anxieties begin to seep away. He recalled his long-standing goal of creating something that transcended the boundaries of conventional design. Hesitation had often shackled him in the past. Each defining moment, the first prototype, the unveiling at an open house, had drawn him toward a greater vision. This project wasn't about perfection, it was about authenticity and engagement. "Once we gather responses, we can pivot or refine based on real needs," he replied, warming to the idea. "I want to hear the stories behind those responses. What do they truly want?" "I'll reach out to schools and caregiver networks," Emily agreed, enthusiasm rising in her tone. "The more voices, the better our approach will be. We can't afford to miss the nuances." Apprehension flickered through him. What if the realities faced were overwhelming? Questions about the project's viability began to scrunch the edges of his emerging confidence. Did he have the stamina to face concerning feedback, or worse, indifference? He inhaled deeply, striving to surrender his fears to the potential of their work. "What if we host a small discussion group?" he proposed. "Getting people in one room might spark ideas we would miss otherwise." "Absolutely, but let's set clear expectations," Emily countered perceptively. "People might come with harsh critiques. There can be a lot of emotional weight tied to personal experiences." "That's true," Mike acknowledged, feeling a rising wave of uncertainty. "But isn't that part of it? Opening it up, confronting these emotions?" His pulse quickened as he delved into contemplation. Beneath the layers of fear lay an undercurrent of revelation, Acknowledging vulnerability was crucial, not just for the project, but for himself as well. His thoughts drifted to Cody. Would this be a chance for his son to voice his challenges and aspirations? What lay behind the eyes of a child interpreted through designs and technology? Power surged within him, mixing with flashes of doubt. How could he capture the essence of Cody's thoughts? "I want to ensure our findings are actionable," he said, breaking the silence. "Every insight needs to be a foundation to build on." "Then let's document everything meticulously," Emily reinforced. "No half measures. All perspectives are valid, and we'll create an adaptable solution." The partnership was pulsating now, and Mike started envisioning the complexity of the work. This was transforming him. His past, marked by restraint, now felt inadequate compared to the path unfurling before him. "I never imagined I'd initiate something like this," he confessed, vulnerability slipping through his usual pragmatism. "From a mere idea to, well, this." "Welcome to evolution," she replied, a spark of encouragement in her voice. "This venture can reshape how we view ability, design, and ourselves." With their purpose crystallizing, Mike felt a paradoxical surge of courage. The fear didn't disappear, but it was intertwined with a burgeoning confidence. The thought of leading the discussion struck him anew, a confrontation with his fears as he would be directly responsible for managing expectations, a role crafted from his insecurities and aspirations. "Is it naive to think we could inspire others?" he pondered aloud, not just as a rhetorical device, but genuinely confronting the slippery slope of his ambitions. "Or a chance to start something necessary," Emily countered, her voice steady. "Sometimes naivete leads the way to profound change." In her words, he recognized the truth. If naivete was a vehicle for change, perhaps it was time to reclaim that part of himself he had relegated to the background. "What if we could show people that innovation mixes with humanity?" he mused, the potential excitement brewing again. "An open dialogue where ideas aren't stifled by fear." He realized they were on the verge of something transformative, not just for themselves or Cody, but for a community that had long been silent. As they committed to this exploration, Mike felt a flicker of resolve, one illuminated with newfound intent. But as the daylight faded on their initial fervor, a shadow loomed over his thoughts. How would they handle resistance once they began to truly provoke questions? He felt an unsettling wave of recognition building. This was only the beginning, and the hardest challenges lay ahead. With that realization, uncertainty greeted him, urging awareness of the need to confront complacency. What were the looming barriers to their progress, and how might they contend with the inevitable setback? In principle, their vision was clear. Execution, however, remained shrouded in a fog of unanswered questions. How deep would the inquiries go? Would they emerge transformed? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was certain: the delicate dance between hope and trepidation was only just beginning. Mike woke early the next morning, a whirlwind of thoughts backing away from the previous day's breakthroughs. The sunlight filtered into his studio, illuminating the unfinished sketches of their design. The quiet warmth was inviting, yet bitterness lingered in the shadow of uncertainty. Would this venture truly lead to something substantial? Or would he simply walk back into the familiar embrace of doubt and hesitation? He set to work immediately, piecing together the outlines of their project and solidifying his vision. As he poured his ideas onto paper, Mike felt a familiar tension rise, the weight of expectations, both from others and from himself. This time, however, he resolved to meet the challenge head-on. He had struggled with envisioning his aspirations moving beyond fragile concepts. Today, he needed clarity and action. Several hours later, after going through his notes and sketches, Mike pulled out his old design manual.
As he read through the principles of user-centered design, he felt a stirring deep within him. Each chapter was a reminder of the intersection between empathy and innovation. What had felt like a mere rehashing of concepts years ago now resonated with fresh urgency. He was no longer an outsider looking in. He was an active participant. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was Emily. "I've contacted a few potential discussion group members. We should meet to finalize the agenda." "Yes, definitely," he replied, a rush of adrenaline igniting his thoughts. "We need to set the right tone, emphasizing that this is a safe space for honest feedback." "I'm glad you mentioned that," Emily replied. "The stakes are high, but we can empower people to share their experiences without fear of judgment." The essence of transformation began to crystallize in Mike's mind. They weren't merely conducting meetings, they were forging connections, crafting a narrative that encouraged dialogue. The rawness of emotion could guide their project in a way metrics never could. As they discussed plans for the gathering, uncertainty shimmied across Mike's thoughts. What if they encountered skepticism or resistance? There were no guarantees that this open dialogue would go as they envisioned. Still, beneath the burgeoning fear lay the potential for empowerment, for both him and those who would participate. "Mike, it's easy to default to anxiety." Emily's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts.
Remember, gathering insights means stepping into uncharted territory. It's where we might discover hidden competencies about ourselves and the audience. "True," he admitted, feeling the light of possibility filtering through the clouds of apprehension. "If we can champion their stories, perhaps we can inspire change in perceptions about ability and innovation." Later, after their meeting concluded, Mike sat in silence, contemplating his son. Cody's recent struggles had become more than personal battles. They had catalyzed Mike's desire for change. Each design choice echoed a longing to empower his son with independence, yet it also served as a reminder of his need for understanding and strength. Driven by emotion, Mike began drafting a new section for their agenda, one that would invite children to share their thoughts. Would Cody be willing to open up? The hesitation of his child's possible vulnerability tugged at Mike's heart, and he realized this wasn't about him alone. It was about cultivating a space for others to engage with new realities. The hours passed, filled with sketches, reflections, and the promise of potential conversations. Mike felt visible walls around his past doubts crumbling as he embraced this new phase, the opportunity to confront paternal fears. He wasn't simply fighting against indifference, he was crafting an avenue for empathy. Later, as night approached, Mike stood before the window, the vibrant sunset bleeding across the horizon. The convergence of hope and self-doubt coalesced in a way he had never experienced before. He needed to be ready, not only for the questions that would arise, but for the strength to face the emotional weight that accompanied them. A silent determination settled in. Each challenge was an opportunity to evolve, a path toward understanding himself and those he sought to inspire. The shadows of self-doubt might linger, but they no longer dictated his future. Yet, amid the new resolve, a flicker of fear returned. What if the revelations he unearthed during the discussions were deeper than he'd anticipated? Would confronting personal struggles bring unforeseen consequences? The night enveloped him in reflective silence. The journey ahead was fraught with possibilities and the lurking weight of vulnerability. But as the dusk deepened, Mike sensed an urgency within. He was on the precipice of transformation, both for himself and the world he would touch. How could he prepare for the inevitable emotional revelations, and what truths about the intersection of design and personal struggle would emerge from their discussions? Mike awoke the next morning with a firm resolve coursing through him.
The world outside his window appeared crisp and alive, a stark contrast to the tumult of emotions rumbling within. Today was the day they would host their discussion group, and he could almost feel the electric charge of anticipation in the air.
Impulsively, he reached for his sketches once more, refining details and piecing together his thoughts with newfound clarity. Each stroke of the pencil felt like reinforcing a foundation on which he could build. As he prepared for the gathering, Mike's mind buzzed with choices. What if participants expressed their stories with raw honesty, leaving him unprepared for the onslaught of vulnerability? That thought gripped him like a vice. Yet he countered it with the belief that discomfort bred growth. He reminded himself that in these moments of shared experience, significant change could occur, not only for them, but for him as well. He needed not just to facilitate this space, but to immerse himself in it fully. When the time arrived, Mike found himself pacing the room, unable to shake off a lingering dread. He paused, glancing down at the agenda he'd meticulously crafted. It was more than a document, it was a lifeline for what he hoped would be an enlightening exploration. A gentle knock on the door jolted him from his spiraling thoughts. It was Emily, bringing with her a warm smile that grounded him. "Hey," she said, brushing past the tension that hung in the air. "Ready as I'll ever be," he responded, forcing a chuckle while noting the tremor in his voice. As participants trickled in, Mike gave a quick mental inventory of faces, their diverse backgrounds, the stories they carried, each one waiting to be told. His heart raced. They weren't just attendees, they were individuals stepping into the unknown, bearing pieces of their lives for discussion. Once the group settled into a circle, Mike introduced the purpose of their meeting. He spoke to share ideas, but he also admitted his own vulnerabilities, his fears of failure as a father, his relentless questioning of his design instincts. Each admission drew a tangible weight from his chest. He was no longer the facilitator, but an equal in the room. The first few exchanges took time to blossom, hesitant words slowly transforming into shared experiences. A woman spoke of her struggles as a caregiver, and a teenage boy bravely voiced his thoughts on the stigma surrounding disability. Each story resonated, their authenticity shattering the walls Mike hadn't realized he had built around himself. For the first time, he listened not just with his ears, but with profound empathy, allowing suggestions to ripple through his consciousness. As conversations deepened, Mike's uncertainty began to unravel. He felt the echo of his son's struggles heightening his desire for genuine connection, reshaping his emotional landscape. He realized the discussions were about more than concepts or designs. They were reflections of humanity in its rawest form. And then, startlingly, one participant, a young girl with a twinkle of mischief in her eyes, stole the floor. "I just want to say that it's important for kids like my brother to feel seen.
If people knew how fun he is, they wouldn't just see him in a wheelchair," she said, her voice steady despite its delicate tone. Mike's heart constricted at the weight of her words. At that moment, a realization washed over him. Designing wasn't solely about creating products. It was about shaping perceptions, expanding narratives, and challenging societal constructs. That ethos needed to manifest in everything he'd been crafting. As Mike glanced around the room, it was clear that something shifted among them all. They'd entered discussing ideas, but they were emerging with a purpose. The dialogue had transformed their encounter into a crucible for change. Yet, just as hope brewed, a flicker of uncertainty flashed back. What would happen next? Would he find the strength to confront the truths arising from their collective stories? The afternoon deepened into evening, casting long shadows across the room where voices echoed with new vitality. Mike gathered his thoughts, aware the path ahead would stretch beyond this day. But how could he harness the energy of this moment to create real change, for Cody, for himself, and for all those voices that felt unheard?
Each question loomed heavily in his mind, pregnant with possibilities, as he pondered the critical choices he now faced. What if they don't just spur him on, but transform him entirely? The sun dipped low as the discussions ebbed, leaving Mike with a profound sense of responsibility and urgency. The echo of raw emotions lingered in the air, mingling with the palpable energy that had ignited when their stories intertwined. This was no longer just an idea, it was an evolving movement. With the meeting concluded, Mike gathered the notes, reflecting on how each participant had shared their vulnerabilities, their aspirations. Each story was a thread in a complex tapestry, ultimately united by a common desire for recognition and empowerment. He felt invigorated yet keenly aware of the weight that accompanied this momentum. "Emily," he addressed her as they debriefed at the side of the room, "today changed everything. We need to channel this. These voices could ripple into something larger." "Wherever this leads," she replied, her voice steady, "we build on their courage. Their stories are our foundation." Her fierce determination mirrored the fire flickering within him. The following days turned into a whirlwind of strategically aligning their vision with the insights they had gathered. Mike dove deep into each narrative, shaping their feedback into actionable design modifications and community initiatives. He was no longer improvising, he was weaving purpose through every component of the wheelchair, making it a symbol of agency and hope. As they refined the prototype, Mike began to see a profound transformation in himself. He was no longer the just mechanic lost in self-doubt. He had evolved into an innovator, a catalyst ready to bridge the gap between society's perceptions and the realities faced by individuals like Cody. Each time they engaged with stakeholders, their story became clearer, bolder, resonating beyond the confines of his garage. One afternoon, sitting with Cody, Mike revealed the updated design. "This is going to be more than just your wheelchair. It's going to represent your voice." Cody's eyes lit up. "Cool! Can it do tricks?" The innocent exuberance anchored Mike, reminding him of the ultimate goal behind each modification: empowerment through joy. Weeks later, after hosting community workshops and garnering sponsorships from local businesses, Mike stood in a large room filled with parents, caregivers, and advocates. During the grand reveal of their revamped prototype, he sensed the anticipation all around him, an electric hum that ignited confidence within. "Today, we showcase not just technology, but the audacity of belief," he began, sharing the journey from concept to design, slowly intertwining Cody's story with the hearts of those in attendance. The audience hung on every word, and Mike delivered each carefully crafted narrative with precise confidence, shedding light on how misunderstandings around disability stifled true appreciation of individual abilities. He watched as eyes widened, minds grasped the significance. There, among the reactions, existed a recognition of the shared dream. They were not merely viewers of Cody's story, they were potential allies in redefining what ability could mean. As Mike disclosed the final design, he noted the layered response, a mixture of admiration and relief. Emotions erupted into applause, enveloping him in a wave of validation he hadn't fully anticipated. This was beyond professional success. It was personal achievement, a testament to enduring resilience. Afterward, Emily walked over, eyes glistening with pride. "You did it, Mike. This changes everything." "Together we did," he replied. The collaboration had sharpened him, pushing boundaries beyond his self-imposed limits. In the midst of the crowd, Mike spotted Cody, wheeling around with a beaming smile, uninhibited. The shared laughter echoed, twining through the air as they embraced the moment. It finally struck Mike. The culmination of hard work, vulnerability, and daring leaps of faith had transformed not only Cody's mobility, but Mike's identity. The doubts that once confined him had dissipated. He was standing strong, recognized for his ingenuity and intention. That night, as he returned to the garage filled with memorabilia of their journey, Mike felt a comforting weight rest within his chest. A solid confidence drawn from shared stories. A victory born out of being seen. He had accomplished something monumental. He had catalyzed a change that would ripple outward, changing perceptions, fostering independence. Now, fear had shifted to ambition. What would they embark on next?
As the soft glow of the garage lights enveloped him, Mike understood this was just the beginning. The echoes of voices uplifted, the radiant laughter of his son, and the embrace of community fueled a promise. Every limit would be tested, every challenge met with creativity. He had faced his ghosts and emerged stronger. The vision he had crafted was blooming into a possibility. Today, he was no longer just a mechanic. Today, he was a father, an innovator, a beacon for others, ready to reshape the world around him. And with that realization, he turned to the designs sprawled across his workbench, envisioning not just advancements in tech, but expansive connections yet to be forged. This was his legacy, inspired by his son and driven by a truth he had now come to know. Resilience was a powerful vehicle for transformation. You need to subscribe now to be part of our journey. Don't miss out on more exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to fuel this momentum. Showing your support means the world to us. Comment below with your reactions. What did this transition mean for you? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of personal overcoming. Don't wait even one more second to amplify our story.